A police officer spits in a woman's face during a routine traffic stop, believing she's just another individual to intimidate. Little does he realize he's about to learn he's made the gravest error of his life. What appeared to be a mere abuse of authority is about to transform into a harsh twist that reveals a truth that will leave everyone astonished. The officer never anticipated that crossing paths with her would alter everything. Now he's going to face the consequences. It was an ordinary morning, but what was about to unfold would shake the very foundations of the entire city. The morning air was thick with the sounds of honking vehicles and muffled conversations as the city began its daily hustle. Inside the luxury car, a faint aroma of leather and perfume lingered, an unspoken testament to the driver's meticulous curation of her life. The officer, a man hardened by years on the job, possessed the kind of arrogance that stemmed from unchallenged authority. He saw power in his uniform and contempt for anyone he viewed as inferior. His decision to approach wasn't about law enforcement. It was about ego, a need to assert dominance. He glanced at his younger partner, whose shifting gaze hinted at discomfort, but said nothing. This was a performance he had executed countless times in slow-moving city traffic. A police car pulls up beside a luxury SUV. The veteran officer, seasoned with years of experience, notices the driver is alone. He smirks, ready to do what he does best: intimidate and humiliate. Feeling invincible, he approaches, hand resting on his belt, and shoots a cold stare at the woman behind the wheel. She, Isabella Reyes, appears composed, but there's something in her gaze that challenges him. Isabella adjusted her sunglasses slowly, not out of defiance, but with an unbothered grace that instantly disrupted the officer's rhythm. Her hands rested steadily on the steering wheel, her fingers motionless yet poised, as if already considering the repercussions of the interaction. The officer's smirk faltered for a moment before his practiced sneer returned. His voice carried an edge laced with the expectation of compliance, but her tone matched it with disarming precision. Each word she spoke sounded intentional, like a blade dulled just enough to avoid drawing blood, but sharp enough to cut through pretenses. Behind her calm exterior, Isabella was already planning her next move. "This is no ordinary traffic stop. Is this your car, or did you borrow it? Let me see your documents." "I'm Isabella Reyes, on my way to an important appointment. Please make it quick." The officer frowned, irritated by her tone. He's accustomed to being in control, especially with individuals he assumes won't stand up to him. The young officer beside him tries to intervene, sensing the veteran's behavior is escalating, but the veteran ignores him. He's in his element and won't be challenged. The tension rises. Isabella senses the hostility growing, but she doesn't flinch. She knows that what's about to happen is a mistake the officer won't be able to undo. The officer, increasingly furious, steps closer, leans into her window, and without warning, spits directly in Isabella's face. The officer's spit landed with a grotesque finality, a deliberate act meant to degrade. For a brief moment, even the chaotic noises of the city seemed to hush, as if recoiling from the act. Isabella's hand moved slowly to her face, her movement precise, almost surgical, as she wiped away the insult with a tissue. There was no tremor in her fingers, no rise in her voice. Her silence was louder than any outcry. Her composure, an unsettling mirror held up to the officer's fury. The younger officer turned away, his discomfort evident, as if realizing he had become complicit in something far darker than he anticipated. The silence that follows is deafening. The young officer freezes, unsure of what to do. Isabella, however, doesn't react with anger or shouting. The veteran officer smirks, believing he's won, that his victim is powerless like all the others he's humiliated. But he's mistaken. He's made the biggest error of his life. Without a word, Isabella grabs her phone and makes a call. "Good luck trying to intimidate me with that phone call." His smirk vanishes when an internal affairs vehicle pulls up, its sirens cutting through the morning stillness. The arrival of the internal affairs car sent a ripple through the scene, its sirens piercing sharply through the morning din. The veteran officer's hand fell from his belt, his confident posture wavering as his partner stiffened beside him. Isabella finally spoke, her voice even and deliberate, but each word struck like a gavel echoing in a courtroom. The revelation of her identity as Judge Vanessa Martins landed like a thunderclap, shattering the officer's perception of control. His face turned pale, his mind racing to reconcile the enormity of his mistake. Around them, Curious onlookers began to gather, their hushed murmurs amplifying the officer's humiliation. Confused, the officer watched as a group of agents exited the vehicle. Isabella met his gaze and said, quote, "I'm attorney Isabella Reyes, the city's lead investigator for police misconduct, and you've just become the centerpiece of my next case." Quote, dot. The officer's expression changed instantly. The smirk vanished, replaced by panic. The control he thought he had is gone. The young officer steps back, his expression torn between shock and fear. What follows is a series of events that shakes the entire city. Isabella, with her calm authority, sets off a chain reaction. The veteran officer is suspended and interrogated by internal affairs, and the case escalates quickly. But what seems like one officer's poor judgment soon reveals a deeper, darker truth. Isabella discovers confidential documents indicating widespread corruption in the department. It wasn't just one rogue officer. Entire networks of high-ranking officials were involved in manipulating evidence, extortion, and worse. Isabella's investigation began in earnest, her sharp mind dissecting the threads of corruption that seemed to permeate every corner of the department. Each piece of evidence she uncovered revealed a system more rotten than she had anticipated, with layers of deceit and complicity stretching beyond the veteran officer. Late nights in her office became routine as she pored over confidential files, her desk buried beneath stacks of documents and scattered notes. Every revelation deepened her resolve, each name added to her list, a reminder of the stakes. She knew that this wasn't just about justice for herself, but a battle for the soul of the city. Isabella now faces a choice: take down the veteran officer, or dismantle the entire system. She chooses the latter. As Isabella delves deeper, she faces relentless threats and intimidation, anonymous messages, an attempt to sabotage her car, and even direct confrontations test her resolve. Despite it all, she presses on. She allies with trustworthy members of internal affairs and leaks critical evidence to the press. The public outcry grows as details of the corruption become impossible to ignore. One night, Isabella receives a chilling call. "You don't know who you're dealing with. Back off." Quote, dot. She recognizes the voice. It's the police commander, the mastermind behind the corruption. But Isabella refuses to back down. "I gather all my evidence, including recordings of the commander conspiring with a powerful politician, and prepare for a press conference the next morning." Quote, dot. In front of cameras and a live audience, Isabella plays the recording. The evidence is undeniable. The commander and the politician are arrested, their crimes exposed. The fallout is immense. While many applaud Isabella as a hero, the threats against her intensify. Isabella discovers that someone close to her was part of the corrupt network. The betrayal is personal and devastating, but it only fuels her determination to continue fighting for justice. The story culminates in a dramatic showdown in an abandoned factory. The factory loomed in the distance, its windows darkened, and its rusting walls a perfect backdrop for the impending confrontation. Isabella's steps echoed eerily as she entered, each sound swallowed by the vast emptiness of the space. Enrique stood at the center, his silhouette sharp against the flickering light. His words were laced with venom, but there was an edge of desperation beneath his bravado. The tension in the room crackled like static, every person present aware that the next few minutes would decide everything. Isabella confronts Enrique, a former ally turned enemy who is now at the center of the remaining corruption network. As police storm the building and arrest Enrique and his associates, Isabella declares, quote, "This ends now." Quote, dot. Her relentless pursuit of justice has cost her dearly, but she emerges triumphant. Isabella Reyes is now a symbol of courage and justice, but she knows the battle is far from over. Corruption doesn't vanish overnight, yet with every step forward, Isabella proves that even the most corrupt systems can be challenged, and change is possible.